We are live in Studio B. We're your day-to-day BYU sports play-by-play. Jason Shepard, Dave McCann, and we welcome in the voice of the Cougars, Greg Wrubell. Hello, Greg. How are you?
Good morning, Jason. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
Great to be with you.
I feel like we've let you down because we really missed an opportunity. Instead of doing, we could have had you on this show to do the interview yesterday. It was International Left-Handers Day, and you are a lefty.
I'm a southpaw.
Yeah, we gave a shout out to Steve Young instead of.
No, clearly on the pecking order, I'm well down from Steve Young. Yeah.
But we're thinking of left-handed quarterbacks. So there's Federick, Young, Pendleton. Do you remember any others?
Was Riley the
and
slinging
Riley,
southpaw?
yeah, Riley.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
How did we not think of Riley?
I brought up Riley.
I didn't think of him yesterday.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, we apologize. We're doing this a day late, but we wanted to honor your left-handedness.
And what a day of celebration it was yesterday.
How did you celebrate,
finish,
by the way,
yesterday? Oh, it was crazy. My office was just buzzing yesterday. Yeah.
All right, so today we're talking about BYU's 5 ranked opponents and how many of those the Cougars need in order to feel comfortable about bowl eligibility. Both Dave and I said a minimum of 2 we think is probably, with everything else that could go on, could help. Where do you fall on that?
Yeah, I think 2, you're in decent shape. 3, you're in probably pretty good shape. I'm of the opinion that however you get to 6, you know, no matter how or when they come. But if you were to look at odds and averages, let's say you expect to win your FCS home game. Let's say you expect to win your Houston game at the end of the year. Let's say you feel you can win in Laramie. And let's say that Arizona State's a team you can beat. Well, now you're left with 2 games. And that maybe brings you to the number of 2 at that point. So, yeah, it's however you get there. Again, you could surprise and win games. People don't have you favored to win at this point. But the good thing about that slate I see there, and you guys have probably hit on this already, but you know, 4 of the 5 come in your building, right? And so as tough a schedule as it is, and yes, they're one of those few teams that has to face all 5 of the ranked teams. You get 4 of them at your house, and that's got to be considered at least a leg up.
Thinking last year at 5-2, we were like, okay, we're a lock, and then. Number
5 chances to get to 6. Yeah, it just never came.
It's hard to get there. It's hard to beat these teams.
Yeah.
If there are 3 defining games, which is the question we've thrown out there today, 3 games that will define the season, what's on your list?
Well, I think it's almost impossible to talk about defining games until after the season, because last year you might have said, well, if BYU can win at Arkansas, that would help define the season. Well, BYU did that, and it still didn't turn out the way BYU wanted. I think usually the defining games tend to come late in the year or past the midpoint of the season, because that's when the stakes are the highest. You're fighting for maybe game 5 or 6 to get to a bowl game, or it's the Utah game. So I think the defining games would tend to come late naturally. But if we were to change the perspective, instead of what 3 games might be good indicators of where BYU might be this season, I think even though it's only an FCS game, I think the Southern Illinois game is a good place to start because it's a top 10 FCS. It's a good FCS team. They're top 10, and they had a ton of top 10 defensive stats last year. That's where they kind of hung their hat. So in an average FCS game, BYU's 18-0 all-time against FCS teams. The average score in those games is 48-10. Okay. Against a good FCS team like Southern Illinois, can BYU get to the 30s and 40s? That's a good indicator of where BYU might be offensively. Can it look like a typical FCS game? So I think the first game, even though it's only FCS, is a good indicator game of where this BYU team might be. Then I think the SMU game the next week, because it's an immediate test for how much BYU's improved defensively because of how good SMU is on offense. They bring back most of one of their best offenses in years from last year. And so week 2, you go right into, you know, has Jay Hill gotten the improvements he wants to see from his guys? It's a really good indicator just in week 2. And I'm going to skip past the game at Laramie for the Big 12 opener against Kansas State. Because it is your first conference game, you were a 2-5 team in this league. K-State's one of the better teams in the league this year. It might give you a good indicator of where BYU is able to compete in the Big 12 this year. So in those first 4 games, I think you see 3 that give you really strong indicators of where this team might end up.
I like the point you made with Southern Illinois. Last year with Sam Houston, it was 14-0, and that became the indicator at the end of the season of the problems and challenges we saw against Sam Houston. Dogged the team throughout, but at the time, maybe it was just a slow start.
Now, Sam Houston was technically an FBS team, but it was their first year in FBS.
Yeah,
they
so
had been
they're making the
FCS. And then BYU did turn around and play an FCS team in Southern Utah 2 weeks later and did win 41-16. So it looked more like a typical FCS game that way. But Sam Houston would be more along the lines of a good, really good FCS team like Southern Illinois is. So, yeah, I think it's not a terrible place to start in terms of what the indicators might be for BYU.
We've said for some time the most interesting hour of this whole month is the postgame show on August 31st, because so much will be answered.
Everybody will be dissecting that game one way or the other. It's like if BYU doesn't look great, it's going to be, oh, here we go again, you know. And if they look great, it'll probably be, well, good, but they were supposed to, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
well,
it's a weird deal.
My hope is BYU looks great and starters stay healthy and starters get rest.
Yep.
And you see some depth guys and you have because you have a short week on the road at SMU the next week. It's a really important 2-game start to the season for a couple of reasons. I think one being health and depth and keeping it through week 1 and then getting ready on a short week to take on a really, really good team on the road that now is technically a P4 team, right? You're playing an ACC team now in week 2.
Fall camp continues to roll on. Has anything stood out to you? What have been your takeaways?
I like the fact that, you know, halfway through, we haven't had to hear from Kalani or Coach Roderick or Coach Hill about losing an important player for the season. Yes, there was the Ben Bywater news to open camp, but that was kind of already a development. And so to this point, I think that the frontline players have stayed healthy. We haven't had to talk about those catastrophic injuries, and hopefully that stays true for the remainder of camp. I think the LJ Martin situation is nothing to worry about. I think he's going to be fine if you're pacing him like they said they were. If you can just get to game 1 with the guys you're expecting to be there, then I think that's half the battle. Is just keeping your. It's a hard month of football. It's a hard-hitting month of football, and they want to hit hard.
Yeah. They
want to set a tone, and so there's that balancing act and that fine line between how much football can you play and still keep everyone where they need to be. But so far it's worked perfectly, and I think that's a really encouraging sign.
Trevor Matich was talking about the offensive line with us, and he said he wants to see, against Southern Illinois, the offensive line play every single possession like they're in the national championship game, of finishing a play, driving your guy into the turf and all that stuff. 2 weeks in, the offensive line, you talk to TJ Woods, you talk to the linemen, they all feel great. They all feel like they're moving there.
And Coach Roderick echoes that and says, yet, he always puts this caveat. You know, A-Rod's saying, I love to talk about him, and I'm saying good things about him, but it's all talk right now. Yeah. We've got to see it in a game. And yeah, let's see that run push. I think one of the areas we can hope for improvement in this next season, because of how much focus Coach Roderick and the offense have put on it, is that run push. The yards per rush number, the rushing game in general, just has to go leaps and bounds from where it was last year. And then in lockstep with that, I think you'll see the the third down conversion number come up as well. It was under 29% last year, and that's just not feasible for productive offense. And Coach Roderick is as well aware of that as anybody. And so I think they do go hand in glove. If those run push numbers and early run gain improvements are shown, your third down conversion number will improve with it. And I think those are 2 huge keys for BYU in 2024. Coach Roderick talks a lot about how important it is for BYU to be a good running football team again, because they were around 3.5 yards a carry last year. And that number's got to come up, and everyone knows it. And I think I think the quarterback can be a part of that. Let's say it. I think the quarterback can be a part of those improved rush numbers this year.
Almost has to. He almost has to, right? Yeah.
Yesterday, one of our discussions on the program was the most underappreciated players on the roster. And we each picked one offense, one defense. I had Jacob Robinson and Cody Epps were mine. You had Keelan Marion and Harrison Taggart, right?
Harrison Taggart, yeah.
Who do you think on this roster is underappreciated?
Well, you know, I like Jacob, but he did get some attention in preseason magazines, second and third team picks. He's out there. He's certainly someone that's notable. He's got 8 career picks. You add another 16 additional PBUs on top of that. He's got a pick 6 from last year. He's an impact player on defense, and people notice him. But I still think you could throw him in the underappreciated category. I think this could be a huge year for Jacob. If you were to pick a defensive player that maybe doesn't get the pub, I like Blake Mangelson. He's a guy that's been outside, can play inside, could be an inside starter for BYU this year. His tackle numbers have come up every year. He's gotten some TFLs, gotten a few more starts. I think I call him the Mangler.
That's great nickname.
Yeah. I think Blake Mangelson's a guy that might be under the radar a little bit, but I think could be an impact player on the D-line for BYU this year. And offensively, it's tough to underappreciate the guy that touches the ball every play, but I think Connor Pay is just such a huge part of BYU's offense, will be an anchor for this team, and in so many ways is the perfect guy to play center for BYU football. All
right, let's ask another football question. We'll shift it to soccer, the international game of football. You see the national polls come out, you see BYU number 3. The Big 12 poll comes out, you see them number 1. You know how many players they lost last season and how much offense is gone from last season. Is that a reputation? Are those reputation votes as opposed to this team? Is this team really 3rd in the country?
Yeah, I think the coaches are aware this team lost a lot. 7 pros. You lose 7 pros off a roster. That's a huge departure. It's a Jen Rockwood vote. Yeah. And with all respect to the GOAT, I mean, this is coaches going, yeah, we know she lost a lot, but this is Jen Rockwood. She's a legend in the game. It's her 30th season. She finds a way to get results, regardless of the combination of players she has on the field. This is a program and a coach indicator, and that's awesome for BYU, the fact that she is the person in charge of this program. Yes, I mean, yeah, she recruits good players, and it's always been about players, but she is the program. And they are saying, you know what, yeah, we know she's lost some players, but we trust her to be good because she's always good. That's just how it is. Yeah. Now, Jen is coaching a different kind of team, right?
She's a realist here.
It's a different group, right? But her challenge will be to find the strengths and maximize them. She's going to find the fittest, the most durable, the most dependable, the most focused players, and put them in the right spots to win, whether they're upperclassmen or the young kids. And there are minutes to be had on this team this year. And so how exciting will it be for some of those freshmen to grab hold of some of those jobs this year and grow into them, with the expectation that upperclassmen will lead as they're leaned on to do so. But I'm truly fascinated. It could be a season where it doesn't look maybe typical off the start, but it grows into something pretty special by the end.
Well, and BYU is going to have a great opportunity right out of the gate. The top 20 matchup with Wisconsin coming to Southfield tomorrow night. Just a quick preview on the game that we'll have on ESPN+.
Yeah, fascinating game in that you've got 2 programs, each with 24 NCAA tournament appearances, 2 head coaches, each who've gone to the Sweet 16 or deeper 9 times. 2 long-standing coaches, Coach Wilkins for Wisconsin's in her 24th year, Jen's in her 30th. They were a tournament team last year, lost to Texas in the second round, as it turns out. You know, they play Big Ten soccer, and a really solid challenge for BYU to open the year. Find out immediately kind of where you stand. Now, they're coming off an exhibition loss, 2-0 over the weekend to Missouri, so they maybe try to figure a few things out as well. Yeah. Intriguing, compelling matchup. We're excited to have it on ESPN+ tomorrow night.
Place will be packed. It'll be something.
Yep. Back at Southfield.
Yes.
No better place.
It's going to be electric. Place always is, right?
It is.
It's such an advantage for BYU. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Always my pleasure.
All right. We'll see Greg upstairs.
Yes, we will.
In just a few minutes.
We'll see him tomorrow night.
That's right.